Live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
Good evening, I'm Maria Garcia. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. Glad you're with us tonight. Tonight we're talking about the largest unsolved shooting in this country today. A gruesome mystery that left this community dismayed, shocked, and truly grief-stricken. This week, 25 years ago, two men walked into the Las Cruces bowling alley and shot 7 people. 4 of them died. 3 were seriously injured. The victims who were killed that day so young: 13-year-old Amy Hauser, 26-year-old Steven Teran, his 2-year-old daughter Valerie Teran, and 6-year-old daughter Paula Olguin. More than 2 decades later, the families of those victims have yet to receive any answers. Tonight we're talking to the new police investigator on the case, Amador Martinez. He's been working on this for about a year. And documentary filmmaker Charlie Minn, who made a movie about the tragedy in 2010 and is releasing a part 2 this week. We'll tell you about the opening in El Paso a little later in the show and in Las Cruces. You can email us your comments and questions now to ABC7Extra@KVIA.com. You can also reach us by phone at 915-496-1775. On Twitter, use the hashtag ABC7Extra or tweet me at MariaG ABC7. Before we get to the discussion, though, let's take a look at what happened that fateful day on February 10th, 1990.
We say closure, but it never will be a closure, but to bring some kind of, resolution to this tragedy that even though they were taken, they were taken by somebody else's hand.
Anthony Teran lost his older brother Steven during the Las Cruces bowling massacre. Steven worked at the bowling alley, and that day he brought along his 2 daughters, ages 2 and 6. They were also killed.
It does seem like yesterday. Even though the time goes by, you still remember all the good times that you had.
25 years later, the case remains unsolved. According to police, 2 men walked into the bowling alley and forced all 7 people inside to put their head on the ground. What happened next left the entire state in shock.
This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a sickness. This is 2 people who went out there and purposefully took the lives of my family.
Police say the men stole thousands of dollars from the business safe and shot the victims at close range, execution style. They then set a desk on fire and fled the scene. Teran says life without his brother is a struggle. He thinks about him every day.
It's hard. Even like this morning, you think about it, and it's like it happened yesterday. You think about things he said, things he did.
A 2010 documentary titled A Nightmare in Las Cruces brought attention to the tragedy. Teran says Charlie Minn's film has helped the healing process.
The only way we're going to be able to cover each other's back is to look out for each other, and I think this is a way to help the community heal.
And joining us now, documentary filmmaker Charlie Minn and police investigator on the case from the Las Cruces Police Department, Amador Martinez. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And as a fellow parent, I just want to give a warning out there to parents. If your little children by any chance are still awake and are with you, the case is very graphic and gruesome, so we do want to warn you about that. And we're obviously going to discuss it, but let's start with that horrible, horrible scene that I think resonates with people so much, because it's just really, the act is pure evil, to line little children and then shoot them in the head at close range and then leave them to die in a fire. I mean, that is a purely evil act.
It's absolutely heinous that small children like that, especially as young as 2, would be shot and left for dead. And for this to go unsolved for this many years is just adds to the frustrations to everything.
Charlie, you've in 2010 you made the first documentary about this. You're releasing part 2 in El Paso and Las Cruces theaters on Tuesday. But tell me, what stayed with you about this case? Why did you decide to tell this story?
My films represent innocent people who had been murdered. They cannot talk, so I talk for them. We had a horrible situation in Juarez. 12,000 people died there in the last 6 years. We should never forget those people. And in Las Cruces, we had a horrible incident, the worst unsolved shooting right now in the country. And we had a 2-year-old shot, 6-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old. This was a message. This was a mensaje to, I believe, the bowling alley owner or a member of his family. It was a family-run business. Why shoot a 2-year-old when they cannot identify anybody? So this has to be a message to somebody.
And you know, speaking about that scene, that horrifying scene, the daughter of the bowling alley manager at the time, she was 12 years old, and she was shot in the head, but somehow managed to call 911. And I think about what a terrifying, traumatic situation that must have been, and yet here's this 12-year-old with this presence of mind to call for help. Right.
You know, Melissa did a absolute courageous job in what she did in calling 911 and fighting through injuries and giving somewhat accurate information to the dispatchers, and then to be rushed to the hospital and be able to still be coherent enough to give information. I mean, that just doesn't happen. It was an absolute amazing job by this 13-year-old child.
You know, a quarter of a century later, why is this still a mystery?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, I have to take a forensic approach to this case, so we're looking at what the evidence has to present with us, or to us. We're also, you know, not forgetting the tried and true methods of shaking the bushes and talking to people, but some of the information is scattered, some of it's in pieces, some of the evidence is you know, being tested forensically at labs, and we're just waiting for it. But in the
like what? What is being tested at labs?
Well, a lot of the evidence that was collected, there's a misconception that most of it was destroyed in a fire, and it wasn't. There was lots of evidence that was collected. Without getting into too many details about what was being sent up, we have sent lots of items for DNA testing, for fingerprint analysis, and understand that back then, back in 1990, DNA analysis it was in its infancy. It wasn't as prevalent as it is today. New technologies and new techniques and investigations have kind of molded us differently than what they had back then. So I think that's kind of what's taken so long, is the evidence they collected wasn't up to what we would do today, but it would be unfair to say that they made mistakes. So we're simply sending it up and analyzing it, and we're just waiting for all that.
No, but DNA technology has evolved significantly in the last several years. There's not a revolutionary development within the last year. So why are those DNA samples being taken now? Why not 2, 3, 5, 6 years ago?
Well, all of it's a process, and we don't want to inundate our labs with 100 pieces of evidence, because it would just take forever. It's not feasible. So the most pertinent evidence is sent up, and then after the analysis is done and we get the results, then we send up additional evidence to corroborate it. So there still are pieces that we are sending up for DNA analysis, but
have there been pieces that have already come back from the lab?
They have.
And do those reveal anything?
Well, understand, we can't reveal too much of the information that we're getting from these labs, but we have sent it up and we are getting results back.
Okay, so I mean, this is still a very active investigation.
It is. It's active and it's ongoing, and the Las Cruces Police Department is throwing any resource that's available to it at the case. I think we've utilized agencies from coast to coast. We've sent pieces to private labs for DNA analysis or other forensic analysis tests. We've utilized our state lab, so there's enormous amounts of resources that are being utilized for this case.
Okay. And Charlie, you spoke to a lot of people in the process of making this film. What is your sense of there has to be some sort of key piece of information that is possibly being overlooked?
Okay, Maria, let's get right to it. You can give tips anonymously, so why someone hasn't called in yet is beyond me. You don't have to give your name. Just give the information, call yourself Peter Pan, and get the heck out of there. Someone out there knows something. Someone's walking on Mesa, someone's walking on Lee Trevino, George Dieter, someone's walking on Telshore, Loman in Las Cruces, and they know what happened. It's really about time they overcame their fear, stepped up to the plate, and helped out the victims' families. Because this has gone on too long. It's just a complete disaster that someone hasn't come forward and said anything.
No, but you still do get plenty of calls. I read a quote from the Las Cruces Police Department that said there are still people calling all the time saying, "Oh, those sketches look familiar." Which, by the way, we have them. If we can pull them up right now, the sketches of the two suspects. There they are. These two suspects. I mean, you still have people who call and say they look familiar.
We do, and you know, it kind of comes and goes in waves. Towards anniversaries, we get more tips than other times, but throughout the years, they've been scattered, so people have been coming forward with their information. We just ask for that to keep happening, and you know, 25 years has passed, and I think some people that may have some information are getting up in age. I hate to say it, but maybe passing away, and they may be taking that information with them. So I think now is our time to get it out through the media and through other sources to say, hey, you know, if you do have some information, please come forward with it. Please don't think it's insignificant or minimal at best. It could be huge. It could be the piece that allows us to line up every other piece of evidence we have.
Okay, Stephanie Senac, manager of what was then the Las Cruces Bull, died from the complication of her injuries in 1999. Officials have ruled her death a homicide. So this is still something, you know, obviously we're still feeling the after effects. I mean, this was in 1999, but there are families obviously still grieving. I mean, she died years later, death a homicide.
Absolutely, absolutely, and from complications from this specific incident. So those that are accountable should be held accountable for her death as well.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the motive. There was a sense, some speculation that it was a robbery gone wrong, but the suspects took money, but they also left plenty of money behind, right?
Well, they took between $4,000 to $5,000 from the safe, and I think they dropped some money as they were making their getaway. But of course, we will not know the exact figure of that robbery because that's only something the killers would know. So if the killer happened to someone walked into the LCPD and said, I did the massacre, eventually the line of questioning will turn to the robbery and they'll be asked how much money was stolen from the safe. If they have the exact number that the police have, well then they have to hold them. So that's something that only the killers would know, is how much was stolen from the safe.
Mm-hmm. We'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit more about the speculated motives and some of the knowledge that we've gained in the last 25 years. So stay with us. Remember, you're watching ABC-7 Extra. You can call us at 496-1775 if you have a comment or a question. Maybe you remember something. You can email us at ABC7Extra@KVIA.com. Twitter, I'm at Maria G ABC7 or with the hashtag ABC7Extra. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. I'm Maria Garcia. We're talking about the Las Cruces bowling alley massacre tonight with documentary filmmaker Charlie Minn and Amador Martinez, Las Cruces police detective, on the case. Ida Olguin, who was a cook at the time at the Las Cruces bowl, has said that the killers seemed frantic when they came in because she said it looked like they were searching for something that they never found. What do you make of that?
Well, yes, that's what Ida told me in the movie, that they came in, they were shuffling through all the drawers, and my guess is that they were looking for drugs. So what exactly were the killers there for? I think the robbery part was an aftermath to throw off investigators, but I do believe that the motive was a message to the bowling alley owner or a member of his family. This is a family-run business back then, and this was drug payback, in my opinion, from talking to the original detectives.
No, I take a different approach. I have to take a factual approach, and I have to go based off of what the evidence presents to me. So I can't make those speculations like Charlie can. I can't say this was drug facilitated or the motive was drugs or bad business dealings, because that's not what the facts present to us right now. So right now what we do know is the murder happened, and in the commission of the murder, all 7 people were shot inside of the bowling alley.
What is the working theory right now? Who were they passing through? Did they target this business specifically? What is the working theory right now?
Well, what we can prove through statements and through evidence is that it was a robbery, and that money was taken in commission of it. As to if they were passing through or this was a targeted business. That's a bit of a million-dollar question, right along with who did it. I think the business itself was targeted because it was so early in the morning, and they came into the kitchen and confronted Miss Holguin first, and then straight to the office they went. So I think there was a bit of planning. It appears as if there was a bit of planning into this, but to go out and say that this was a drug-facilitated murder, we just, as a police department, can't do that right now.
Okay. You know, there's been a lot of speculation, as you say, about the robbery, about the motive. How many persons of interest has the police department over the last quarter century interrogated or spoken to? Any near suspects?
It's been numerous. I couldn't give you an exact idea. I think in the year that I've had it, we've had probably like 25 people of interest that we've questioned, that we've interrogated. And like I said, we've utilized agencies from the East Coast to the West Coast in doing so. We sent two retired detectives who have volunteered to assist us in this case to Colorado, to areas in Arizona. So, you know, this case, even though it happened in Las Cruces, New Mexico, has become sort of a national case because we've utilized so many resources. As a matter of fact, we had a tip in reference to a male in Mexico, so we utilized some resources down there. So I guess you could say it's a bit international now.
Okay. Charlie, I want to talk about, you know, how people say that time heals all, but I just don't imagine time healing a wound so deep for the family of the victims who died so horribly. We spoke, as you heard in the opening piece, to the brother of Mr. Taran, who was killed that day with his two very young daughters, 6 and 2 years old, and he lives in Phoenix but travels to El Paso around the anniversary to still remind people about it. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like to talk to someone to talk to families who live every day with this kind of deep grief.
I don't know how a lot of the victims today get through this injustice, whether it's in Juarez or in this case in Las Cruces. Anthony Taran really summed it up when he said they didn't die by an accident or sickness. This was murder. That's unacceptable. And this was a deliberate act by 2 animals who walked in there and shot 7 people in the back of the head. These victims are such strong people. Audrey Taran lost her whole family. She lost her 2 daughters, ages 2 and 6, and her 26-year-old husband. 26 years old is also very young.
Very young.
My heart bleeds for Gloria Woods, who lost her first daughter, Amy Hauser, 13 years old, took a bullet right to the brain. My heart bleeds for the Hauser family, Ida Holguin's family. We have a city that was forever altered, lives that were altered. Someone has to call in and give the necessary information to the gentleman to my right, Amador Martinez, so we could settle this thing.
What is your working theory about who these men were, about their identity? I mean, who were these?
They were first described as being 2 black males, and then 2 Arabian males, and then 2 Hispanic males. So they're looking for 2 Hispanics in the borderland, which is extremely tough. That's like looking for 2 Asians in China. We have a very difficult case here. We have a crime scene that was destroyed by the fire. We have hardly any DNA at the time. And are these sketches accurate? That's something I addressed in the movie. And when part 2 comes out, a lot of people will see the first part and they'll see 36 minutes of new footage. I couldn't do anything more humanly possible to cover this case for the people out there who are interested in finding justice for the families.
And we do want to let people know the movie screens this Tuesday in Las Cruces at the Mesilla Valley Mall and in El Paso at Premier Cinemas at Bassett Center.
For at least a week.
For at least a week, yes. And we're going to have that on your screen. We're going to have the information before we end tonight's show, so want to let you know about that. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk a little bit more about the families of the victims, and we're also going to talk about the evidence, so stay with us. Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. We're talking about the bowling alley massacre. a gruesome shooting that has still not been solved. I want to ask you about this, Mr. Martinez. With the advances in DNA forensic technology, can something else be done? I certainly don't mean to be insensitive, but has the department ever considered exhuming the bodies of the victims?
Well, it's funny because we were just talking about that exact thing. Consideration has been given to that, but we also have to take into account families of the victims and friends of the victims and how that would impact them as well. I think in exhuming the body, they could get us a better description of how the events played out, but I don't think the question of how they died is up in the air right now. I think it's pretty clear. What we're focused on is the evidence that was left in the office within the bowling alley, and we'd like for that to point to who, and then ultimately get a why. Mm-hmm. So
the bodies would not in any way help answer the who question.
Right. I think when a body is exhumed, it's mainly to focus on the why, or how somebody passed away, how somebody died. And I don't think that's a question at this point in the investigation.
Charlie, what do you think is the critical missing link here?
That's a great question, Maria. I don't know if I really have an intelligent answer for you. I know the police have looked at everything possible over 25 years. The problem is that the crime scene was destroyed by a fire. And then it was put out by, I believe, a fire extinguisher. So now we have a wet crime scene as well, which is also a no-no. Hardly any DNA at the time. Sketches that could be accurate or inaccurate. Killers could be dead. This is a very tough, difficult, complicated case to solve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What was the most revealing piece of evidence so far? What has been that one thing that has revealed the most in this investigation?
I think the victims' accounts of what happened is the most revealing, because that's really the window to what happened. They saw it, they lived it, they were able to describe it the way that they perceived it. So I think in speaking with them, that's the most telling, that's the most accurate, because you see a piece of evidence on a scene and it's there, it's tangible, but it doesn't move, it doesn't speak. When you talk to a victim or a person, a witness to the crime, not only do they tell their story, but you get to see the emotion that's behind it. There's a bit of reliving the event when they tell it.
Hmm. Oh wow! Let's go to our phone lines. We have PJ from Las Cruces on the phone. Hi, PJ. What's your comment or your question tonight?
Why haven't the LCPD tried to get the community to pitch in for a huge cash reward for tips leading to an arrest and conviction, or getting corporations nationwide to pitch in? Thank you.
Thank you so much, PJ. So PJ asking why LCPD hasn't gathered the community to pitch in some cash for a big cash reward, or maybe getting some corporate donations for that?
Right. At the time of the incident, or right after the incident, something like that did happen, and people were donating, and businesses were donating as well. Unfortunately, it was to a third-party account that was outside of the control of Las Cruces Police Department. So those monies have come and gone. That wasn't something that was under the control of the Las Cruces Police Department.
Who was handling that money?
I'm not entirely sure who was handling it. It was a private entity outside of the department. Because we, as a department, I don't think we take monetary donations, but we do utilize Crime Stoppers now. And they do take in donations for crimes such as this. And there are rewards for those that come forward with information that's valuable to us that we can use.
Charlie, do you know anything about this account that a third party was handling?
I don't. I did hear from numerous people that the reward money was stolen. So everything about this case is sad, and I do want to mention that partial proceeds from this box office will go to the victims. Mm-hmm. It's the right thing to do. It's the only thing to do. To the families of the victims who died. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So, where do we go from here? I mean, how do we keep this from not becoming stagnant?
Right. I think the department has done a great job in making sure it doesn't become stagnant. I think we've continued to utilize resources that are needed, but even more so, you know, when I first got the case, we did an audit on the evidence, and we did an audit on interviews and what was done, and I found some things, some different avenues to take. So I'm actively pursuing those, but this is far from being a cold case, so to speak. We'll continue to investigate it because, like Charlie said, it's truly a tragedy that shook the foundation of Cruces.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Charlie, I think, you know, with your films, that's what you strive to do, is to remind people of what happened so that it doesn't become stagnant.
All my films create awareness, inform, educate, remind people. And as I said, my biggest thing is they're representing innocent people who have been murdered. And right now, we need some information from the public that will help solve this case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this was actually your first film, your first documentary film. We have some video of you. I know that obviously you did the documentary in Juarez, and then some of those proceeds also went to some organizations and some victims and the families of the victims in Juarez. So tell me about how this first movie, the Las Cruces Bowling Alley Massacre movie, A Nightmare in Las Cruces, sort of changed you as a filmmaker, or what it did for you as a filmmaker.
Melissa, excuse me, Maria, I'm sorry. This was a very difficult, complicated film to shoot. It took a lot out of me, but I kind of feel uncomfortable talking about myself because this is all the emphasis should be on the victims. Everything, this is all victim related. And I asked the people out there in Las Cruces and El Paso to support this film, and so that I could write a huge check to the victims' family members. And what the movie does is it keeps the case fresh, it keeps it alive. You can't solve something unless you talk about it. And I know that whenever the film plays, leads start coming in. And Amador told me right before the show that leads are starting to come in now with the movie coming out on Tuesday.
What percentage of the proceeds will go to the victims?
I would say right now between 10 to 20%. So whatever that comes out with at El Paso, Bassett, and Las Cruces, at Cineport 10. And I'm also showing the film in other cities too. You never know what people know. So it's going to be somewhere in that range, 10 to 20%. And as I said, it's the right thing to do and the only thing to do.
Okay, and if we can take that information on your screen so that people can see when the movie is premiering in El Paso and Las Cruces. There it is, A Nightmare in Las Cruces Part 2 premieres on Tuesday. Las Cruces at the Mesilla Valley Mall, and El Paso at Premier Cinemas in Bassett Center. Any closing thoughts, Mr. Martinez?
Just if somebody out there has some information, it doesn't matter how insignificant they think it is, please call in. Please allow us to judge for ourselves. Please allow us the opportunity to have an additional piece of this puzzle so that we can put it together and hopefully solve this and bring some closure to those that need it the most.
What is the cash reward right now?
You know, I'm not entirely sure. I know that as the anniversary comes up, it's usually bumps up a little bit, but the Crime Stoppers themselves will determine that.
Okay, and people, if they'd like to donate, they can contact Crime Stoppers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. We're running out of time. I appreciate it.
For having us.
Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming, for joining us on ABC-7 Extra. We hope you found this informative and helpful, and we'll see you next week.